Get your hands off that seat. This section isn't for you. She didn't ask his name. She didn't ask anything. I have every right to sit here. Not on my watch. What are you doing? That's my bag. She yanked it off the seat like it belonged to no one. You don't get to talk to me like that. His voice stayed level. Then don't give me a reason to. She slapped him so hard the sound rattled the cabin windows. He touched his cheek. Then he said 4 words, quiet enough that she had to lean in to catch them. You just ended it. 9 minutes later, she was standing on the tarmac with her career in pieces. Let me take you back to where this started. It was 5:50 in the morning at Fulton County Executive Airport outside Atlanta. The air still had that pre-dawn chill, thick with jet fuel and cut grass from the fields beyond the fence line. Ground crew moved between hangars in reflective vests, radios crackling low. At the edge of the private terminal, a man got out of a rideshare car alone. No entourage. No assistant carrying a garment bag. Just a backpack over one shoulder, a faded Georgia Tech hoodie, jeans with a small paint stain on the knee, and beat-up running shoes. His name was Marcus Reyes. Search that name and you'd find almost nothing, no magazine profiles, no verified social accounts, just an old university engineering bulletin that mentioned him in passing. Marcus was 44 years old. He'd grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Point, raised by a single father who worked nights at a freight depot. Marcus paid his own way through Georgia Tech doing HVAC repair on weekends, graduated in mechanical engineering, and spent the next 19 years turning a small industrial parts shop into Halcyon Dynamics, a $2.9 billion aerospace components manufacturer supplying parts to 3 of the world's largest airlines. He didn't dress like it. That was deliberate. Marcus had a theory: take away the suit, the watch, the title, and watch how people treat you. That's the only version of the truth that matters. He walked into the terminal, gave a small nod to the desk agent, who waved him through without a second look. She'd checked him in dozens of times before. Out on the ramp, his aircraft waited. A Bombardier Global 7500, tail number HDX-190, owned outright by Halcyon Dynamics, managed through a charter operator called Meridian Wing Services, which handled crew, maintenance, and scheduling. He climbed the air stairs. The cabin smelled like fresh coffee and citrus cleaner. Cream leather, brushed titanium trim, a private suite behind a sliding door at the rear. Marcus took his usual seat, second row, window side, dropped his backpack beside him, and pulled out a tablet to review a supplier contract. He was flying to Denver to finalize a $190 million acquisition of a smaller avionics firm. Just another Thursday for a man who built things quietly. Now, the other person in this story. Dana Whitfield, 51, senior flight attendant with Meridian Wing Services, 16 years on staff, silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun, a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Among the ground crew, Dana had a reputation. The polite version was exacting. The version people only said in the crew lounge, quietly, was something else. Coworkers had noticed a pattern for years: passengers of color got clipped answers, longer waits, colder service. 2 formal complaints had been filed. One from a black surgeon flying to a medical conference. One from a Filipino family celebrating an anniversary. Both investigated. Both closed. No action taken. That morning, Dana wasn't even supposed to be on this flight. Her scheduled trip had been swapped after a maintenance delay elsewhere, and she'd been pulled onto the Denver charter 25 minutes before boarding. She hadn't looked at the passenger manifest. She hadn't glanced at the client file. She stepped onto the jet, walked into the main cabin, and saw Marcus Reyes sitting in the front suite in a hoodie with a paint stain on his jeans. Her expression changed instantly. She didn't ask who he was. She didn't check the tablet at the galley station. She assumed. And that assumption was about to cost her everything. Dana didn't walk over. She strode, heels cracking against the cabin floor. She stopped in front of him, arms crossed. I need to see your boarding authorization. This section is reserved. Marcus looked up from his tablet, unbothered. He opened the Meridian app and turned the screen toward her, his name, the flight number, the tail number, today's date, clear as day. She glanced at it for barely 2 seconds, then made a short exhale that wasn't quite a laugh. A screenshot doesn't prove you're cleared for this cabin. She said this cabin like it cost her something to let the words touch him. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, Marcus said, voice flat. Look, I don't know how you got past the desk, but the forward suite is reserved for the client. There are perfectly good seats in the back. I'd suggest you get comfortable there. She smiled with nothing behind it. Marcus didn't respond. He put in his earbuds and went back to his tablet. That silence undid something in her. Her jaw tightened, her fingers curled. She reached down, grabbed his backpack off the seat, and started toward the rear. I'll get you settled back there. You'll be more comfortable. Marcus stood. He was 6 feet 2 inches, and something about the stillness in his posture made the cabin feel smaller. Put it down. I'm not moving. Dana froze mid-step. Something flickered across her face, hesitation, maybe, but she swallowed it. She dropped the bag hard onto the floor. Don't make this into something it doesn't need to be, she said, lower now. Then, half under her breath, walking toward the galley, this is exactly what happens when people don't follow the rules. From the galley doorway, a pair of eyes watched everything. Jasmine Cole, 24, junior flight attendant, 5 months on the job, holding a tray of water glasses, frozen. She'd heard stories about Dana. She'd seen her be curt before. This was different. She wanted to speak. Her mouth opened, and nothing came out. Dana had seniority, and everyone remembered what happened to a junior attendant the year before who'd been quietly moved to a regional route after disagreeing with Dana in front of a client. No paperwork. Everyone just knew. So Jasmine stayed still. For now. Dana came back a minute later, color high in her face, composure thinning. She planted herself in front of Marcus again. I am telling you for the last time. Show me identification proving you belong in this section, or I radio ground security and have you removed. Marcus set his tablet down slowly. I'd like to speak with your captain. You don't get to make that call, Dana snapped. I run this cabin, and I'm telling you, you do not belong here. She jabbed a finger toward the rear. Marcus looked at her, steady, unblinking. Then, quiet, do what you need to do. Something in Dana broke loose. Maybe it was the calm. Maybe it was that he wouldn't bend. She reached fast for the earbuds resting on his armrest. Marcus pulled back instinctively, a reflex, barely brushing her wrist. Dana recoiled like she'd been burned, gasped, stumbled a half-step back. Then she swung, open palm, full force, across his face. The crack of it echoed through the cabin. Jasmine dropped the tray in the galley, glass shattered against the floor. Marcus's head turned with the impact. A red mark bloomed across his cheek. He sat completely still for 5 long seconds. Dana was breathing hard, one hand still raised, finger jabbing toward him. Don't you ever put your hands on me. I saw what you did. I have every right to defend myself. She smoothed her uniform, fixed a loose strand of hair, and her voice shifted, softer, rehearsed. I'm calling security. And I'm telling them exactly what happened. You assaulted a crew member. Marcus said nothing. He reached into his hoodie pocket, unhurried, and pulled out his phone. The screen was already lit. A recording app, timer reading 14 minutes 52 seconds. He'd started it the moment she first walked toward his seat. He set it face up on the armrest. Everything you said. Everything you did. The bag on the floor. The slap. The story you're about to tell security. All of it, he said, almost gently, is right here. Dana stared at the phone. The anger was still there, but underneath it, something colder moved in. Doubt. Record all you want, she said finally, straightening. We'll see who they believe, 16 years of seniority, or some guy in a hoodie who wandered into the wrong section. She turned and walked to the intercom, pressed the button, and her voice transformed, softer, shaky, a performance of distress. Ground Ops, this is Senior Attendant Whitfield on HDX 190. I need security at the aircraft. Unruly passenger in the forward cabin, refusing instructions. He became physically aggressive, grabbed my wrist. I feel unsafe. Please hurry. She released the button and turned back, composed, convincingly shaken. From the galley, Jasmine stood frozen in the broken glass, hands trembling. She had seen every second of it. She knew exactly what was real. She thought about the attendant who'd been quietly reassigned the year before. She thought about her own rent, her 5 months on the job. She stayed still. For now. 2 minutes later, boots on the air stairs. 2 airport security officers boarded, one older, calm, name tag reading Alvarez, one younger, tense, hand near his radio. Dana intercepted them before they'd taken 3 steps into the cabin. Thank you for coming so fast. The passenger in the forward suite forced his way in, refused to move when I asked multiple times, then grabbed my arm. He's been hostile. I want him off this aircraft. Officer Alvarez nodded, unhurried, and walked down the aisle to where Marcus sat, still seated, phone recording on the armrest, tablet on his lap. Sir. Airport security. Can I see some identification? Marcus reached into his back pocket, slow and deliberate, and handed over his license. Alvarez looked at the photo, looked at the name, Marcus A. Reyes, and something shifted behind his eyes. He stepped back, turned slightly, and keyed his radio low. Alvarez lowered the radio. He didn't turn toward Marcus first. He turned toward Dana, and the look on his face wasn't anger, it was something quieter and more final. The look of a man who just understood exactly what he'd walked into. He walked past Dana without a word and back to Marcus. Mr. Reyes, I apologize for the interruption. Is there anything you need from us? Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Then said 3 words, quiet as breath, get her off. Dana stood frozen near the galley, all the color draining from her face. Wait, he can't possibly be, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Jasmine stepped out of the galley then, hands still shaking, but she stepped out. She looked at Officer Alvarez and found her voice, cracking at first, then holding. I need to tell you what actually happened. Jasmine, don't, Dana snapped. Jasmine kept going. I saw all of it. Mr. Reyes was already seated when Ms. Whitfield approached him. He showed her his booking confirmation. She dismissed it. She grabbed his bag without asking and tried to move it to the back. He stood up and told her to stop. She dropped the bag on the floor. She came back and threatened to have him removed. He asked to speak to the captain. She reached for his earbuds. He pulled back, that's all he did, he pulled back. He didn't grab her. She slapped him. Then she said she'd report him for assault. The cabin was silent except for the hum of the ventilation system. Dana took a step toward Jasmine, voice low and sharp. 5 months. You've been here 5 months. You don't know how anything works. When this is over. That's enough, Alvarez said, cutting through it. Ms. Whitfield, stop talking. At that moment the cockpit door opened. Captain Renata Osei stepped out, headset around her neck, expression tight. She'd been listening on the security channel. She took in the scene in under a minute, and in that minute her face moved from neutral to something cold and certain. "Ms. Whitfield, you're relieved of duty, effective immediately. Collect your things. You have 60 seconds to deplane." "Captain, if you'd just let me." That wasn't a request. Dana stood frozen for several of those 60 seconds, eyes moving from Alvarez to Jasmine to Marcus. Marcus wasn't looking at her anymore. Already back on his tablet, like she was weather that had already passed. She grabbed her bag from the galley and walked down the aisle, her composure cracking with every step. At the top of the stairs, she turned back. The cabin door swung shut before she could say anything else. The jet lifted off at 6:34. Inside the cabin, the quiet afterward was soft. Jasmine brought Marcus a cup of coffee, her hands still not quite steady. "Mr. Reyes, I'm so sorry." He looked up, something in his face easing. "Thank you, Jasmine. What you did back there took real courage." She nodded and went back to the galley before the tears came. Marcus picked up his personal phone and called his attorney, Priyan Kemalu, 11 years working together. She answered on the second ring. "Marcus, it's early. What happened?" He told her everything, calm, precise, no heat in his voice, the tone of a man who'd already decided what came next. Priya was quiet for a moment. "I've watched you let things like this go more times than I can count." A pause. "Don't let this one go." "I wasn't planning to." By the time the jet landed in Denver, 4 things were already in motion: a formal assault complaint filed with airport police, recording attached, a demand letter to Meridian Wing Services legal department with a 48-hour response window, a formal request for Dana Whitfield's complete employment file and prior complaint history, and a notice that Halcyon Dynamics was reviewing its $9 million annual charter management contract, Meridian's single largest client relationship. The Denver acquisition closed without a hitch. Meridian's legal team reviewed the recording 3 times. 3 lawyers, 1 conclusion: unambiguous assault, a falsified incident report, no gray area. By the next afternoon, Dana Whitfield was terminated. Not suspended, terminated. 16 years gone in a single phone call. When HR pulled her unredacted file, the room went quiet. 2 prior complaints from passengers of color, both investigated by the same regional manager, both closed with identical language: insufficient evidence, no further action required. That manager was placed on administrative leave the same week. He never came back. 3 weeks later, the county DA filed 2 criminal counts against Dana Whitfield: simple assault and filing a false police report. The trial lasted 2 days. The prosecution played the full recording for the jury, 14 minutes 52 seconds, uncut. The bag hitting the floor. The slap. The fabricated distress call. Jasmine took the stand, nervous but steady, and never wavered. Then Dana took the stand. Under cross-examination, the prosecutor asked one question: "Ms. Whitfield, can you explain why you assumed Mr. Reyes didn't belong in the forward cabin of his own aircraft?" Dana opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "He didn't look, the way he was dressed, he didn't seem." She stopped. 12 jurors watched her. She never finished. The jury deliberated for under an hour. Guilty, both counts. 18 months probation, 150 hours of community service at a civil rights center, a $12,000 fine, a permanent record. Dana stood in the courtroom as the verdict was read. She didn't cry. She just stared ahead like someone watching the last door in a long hallway swing shut. Marcus gave one interview after the trial. Asked what he wanted people to take from it, he said simply, "I don't want anyone to remember my name. I want them to remember that this almost disappeared." Without the recording, it's her word against mine, and we both know how that usually goes. He kept flying in old hoodies. He kept walking through terminals alone. His phone was always within reach. Halcyon Dynamics crossed $3.6 billion in revenue the following year. Marcus didn't hold a press conference. He quietly established the Reyes Fairness Fund, $6 million dedicated to free legal representation for people facing discrimination in service industries who didn't happen to own the plane. In its first year, the fund took 40 cases. 11 settled. 2 went to trial. Both won. Jasmine never went back to Meridian. She didn't have to. The charter company that absorbed Halcyon's fleet management offered her a senior attendant position the same week she left. She took it the same day. Asked later why she'd spoken up knowing what it might cost her, she paused before answering, "Because I saw what happened, and staying quiet would have made me part of it. Silence isn't neutral. That morning, I decided I was done choosing it." Dana completed every requirement of her sentence. She applied to 4 airlines. All 4 turned her down. Her name became a case study, not told as a villain story, but cited in HR training modules about what happens when bias goes unaddressed long enough. A reporter found her 8 months later working retail in a small town 2 states away. She declined to comment. On the flight back from Denver, Marcus closed his eyes and thought about his father coming home from the freight depot at 6 a.m. About every room he'd walked into where someone decided who he was before he opened his mouth. His phone rested on the armrest, recording app closed now, but his thumb stayed near it anyway. Because in a world quick to decide who you are before you've said a word, proof isn't optional. Sometimes it's the only thing standing between the truth and someone else's version of it.